Hello, Hopkinton. Welcome to the Hangout Hour. Hey, who changed our music?
I
I
have
wasn't
no
aware of that.
idea. I
Who
don't
did
know.
that?
It's
Was
always
that
a
you, Bob?
surprise.
I
No, it
know.
wasn't
We're
me.
blaming
It's
it on
always a
me.
surprise where it
Nothing to
comes
do with
from.
me.
I'm sure it was Mike. Mike's always messing around. Anyways, welcome to our viewers who are joining us for this live um, talk show, Hopkinton Hangout Hour. It is Wednesday, February the 3rd. So it being the 7 o'clock hour, that's why we're here. And joining me tonight, who does from time to time, is Bob Hamilton, who will be co-hosting and contributing to the conversation. And our
I have
guest
a lot of
tonight,
questions for Sean.
okay. And our
Everybody
guest
does.
tonight um, is the man who never says no, who is always there with information to keep us up to date. Our Board of Health Director, Sean McCullough. Sean, well, thank you so much for coming back and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's yeah, I imagine there are a few questions on everybody. Just
Of course, there are always questions.
Yeah.
Of course. So, how about first we get up to speed? You actually had a little bit of breaking news on the last episode of Keep Moving when you were the guest there because you had just gotten some information. And if somebody hadn't heard that, can you give us the status and the update of what that information was?
so, anybody who's been watching the news is aware that um, we are in a challenge. We're dealing with a logistical issue, and so we have been approved as a state vaccine provider. Casey's done a fantastic job at positioning ourselves or the community to provide vaccine.
All right. I just want to interrupt you there, Sean. And you know why? I don't just want to gloss over that because I think that is really cool. So could you please just take a moment and describe like what went into that and how the approval process came about? Because I think that's really impressive that our little town did that.
It's we could devote a show to this. So it's a complicated process where we have to demonstrate to the Mass Department of Public Health that we have qualified people on staff to provide vaccinations. We have to complete a series of exams. We've done that. We have to verify that we have the equipment necessary to store vaccines. We've done that. The state comes out and inspects our facility to make sure that everything that we have, stated is accurate. Because they are our regulator, as I am, the regulator in the town. Then they set, the expectations for us. We have to have, with our current unit, we have to have, the data recorder that they approve. We have to log in twice a day by logging in, that lets them know that the logger is working, that we're maintaining our vaccine stock. And this is our vaccine stock being our flu vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella, that stock that we're carrying, or that we're storing that at the proper temperatures. And then because we are part of that, because we ran successful flu vaccination clinics, because the state came out and verified that we could run both interior and exterior mobile vaccination clinics, they then provided us an opportunity to participate in the COVID vaccination program. So, there's this whole level of proficiency that you have to demonstrate. We've done that. We have there are two state plans, an emergency dispensing site plan and it's late and I'm totally blanking on what the SMS plan stands for, but we've got those plans in, they're current, they've been reviewed by the state and approved. So now we are, so then we entered into the, I call it the quest to get access to vaccine, to start with the COVID vaccination process. And that's, I mean, it's a fairly involved process. Again, we had to demonstrate that we had the capabilities, that we had completed all of the work. And so we had submitted all the paperwork, we had passed the exams, we received the approval. And then what happened was this is almost the exact time where the first responders clinics were, we were told to start putting together a plan to vaccinate our first responders. And we had our plan, but then they said each community had to be able to, we had to commit to a 200 dose shipment. Because we didn't have 200 first responders, we were told that we would have to form a group. And on that day, the fire chiefs of Ashland, Hopkinton, Southborough, Westborough, and Westborough, Southborough, Northborough, because they were all in communication, we formed a group. We committed, we contacted the state, said we formed this group. We have approximately 400 first responders. So they assigned us vaccine. They approved our group to receive vaccine for our first responders. And Westborough was identified as the lead health department. They had already put together an arrangement with the DoubleTree Hotel. So it just made sense to go along with that. We finished the first round of vaccinations for the first responders. And then we were awaiting, are you approving us to receive vaccine? We were kind of left in the dark. What is our status? What do you expect from us? What do we have to do? And what we were waiting for is the approval. And then what they give us the approval, and then they ship us a survey, and you use that survey to order vaccine. So it was the day that I appeared on the chat with Amy Beck from the Senior Center that we received confirmation that we were approved as a COVID vaccine provider. And then our whole plan, all of our plans are based on receiving the Moderna vaccine. It's the easier vaccine to handle. It's a process quite similar to operating a flu clinic. So here we are all set. We put in an order for 600 vaccines, and we received a word that we weren't going to receive anything near 600. We'd be lucky to get 100. And moving forward, we'd be lucky to get more than 100 per week. So then when you start looking at, I think there are roughly, I'll just call it 950. There are 950 residents that are over the age of 75 in town. There are another, I believe the numbers, about 250 to 300 that are age 65 and above. And when you start looking at those numbers, and then at us receiving 100 Moderna vaccines a week, we're going to be 12 weeks before we could, vaccinate those two groups. And so Casey and I did what we do all the time. We pivoted and figured out what are our options. How can we, we talked to our partners, and then Casey Casey did her magic, and we got a call that said that we would be considered to receive or considered eligible to receive Pfizer vaccine, which Pfizer vaccine comes in a minimum shipment of, well, they're 975 dose increments.
Okay.
So that's a significant difference between,
100.
the 100 the 100 increments of Moderna.
Yep.
So it meant, and then the Pfizer has to be kept at -80 degrees. So you need special equipment. There's a thawing process for each vial. Then once you get the thawed vial, you have to add a solution to that vial. You have to mix the vial. Then you have, depending on the temperature, between 2 and 6 hours to use that vial. So there are just a series of logistical challenges that you have to overcome. And then you want to use that vaccine in about 5 days. So we got the word on a Monday that we could consider going with the Pfizer. We had to have a decision by Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And
was this yesterday, Tuesday?
No, this was last week.
Okay.
And then you're sitting there going, if we don't get this right, we're gonna lose I think it was over $100,000 worth of vaccine.
Wow.
And we were going to jeopardize our ability to get any future vaccine. So, we spoke with Norman and the chief, and we decided that, we weren't ready, and we needed to make sure that our plans were in place. We knew it would take a couple of days to get our plans together, but I wasn't willing to make that or take that risk and then jeopardize our ability to provide vaccine in the future. And then, this moves, it changes every day.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, the other critical thing, and this relates to the Google document, at that point on Tuesday, we only had 350 people signed up. So now I've got to use 975 vaccines, but I only have 300 people to give it to, or 350 people to give it to. So I'm at potential risk of losing that extra vaccine. So again, we just weren't willing to take that risk. But in the 2 days after that, and following a call with the state health department, we were told that we would, if we wanted it, we would be allotted that Pfizer vaccine, and that Pfizer vaccine, it wasn't strictly for Hopkinton, it was for our group. So we spoke to our partners from the first responders group, and we developed a plan. We again consulted with the different fire chiefs, with town manager, and we put a plan together. We spoke to the DPH again, and we submitted an order on what was it, Tuesday morning? Well, we submitted I guess it was Monday morning, we submitted the order. And now we're waiting.
The order for the 900 Pfizer ones?
We'll know on Friday if we're gonna, on Friday, we should know if it's coming.
Yeah.
We know if, we're waiting for the word from the Department of Public Health. We're waiting to receive a shipping number. And if we receive those two things, then we will move to open up the clinics. And the challenge here is, again, you need to make sure that you have enough people in queue to be able to then rapidly open up a clinic, provide the notifications to everybody, have everybody sign up, and then bring in the, just all of the clinic workers and basically set the place up, or stand it up to execute and then close it down. And so that's why we have the list. So in theory, we'll have, Hopkinton's, the people that have signed up that are 75 and older from Hopkinton. We'll have, several people from other communities, and that will give us our total. And then if we get the vaccine, we will open up the clinic. People will receive a link. They'll be able to come in, schedule a time, and then we will, we will operate a clinic. And then the next challenge is, I don't know that I'm going to get vaccine the next week.
Right.
They're going to have to give me another shipment or allotment of Pfizer 3 weeks down the road so I can provide a second dose. But the challenge, it's like this supply chain challenge that we're facing. The governor says there are roughly 1 million people in the Commonwealth that are 75 and older, and we're receiving roughly 180,000 doses of vaccine a week. So that alone, it's going to take some time to get through the 75 and older group, and then a portion of that 180,000 is going to finish off the second doses for the first responders and the people that receive, the people from the phase 1 group that received their vaccine at the back end. So, and that'll be a bit of a challenge moving forward, because you vaccinate a group over the month, and then you start all over again, giving them their second dose. So it's a process. And then if you want to expand your delivery, you have to expand your capacity to deliver vaccine. And that's one thing I'll credit the governor in doing, is he's figuring out ways to provide as much capacity before the vaccine's available. And that's causing some problem, because a lot of people are, like right now, Hopkinton we have our little star on the map as a clinic provider, but I, like many others, we have no vaccine. So, they're building the capacity. There are more mass clinics that are going to be coming online in the next couple weeks. They announced today that the federal government has allotted vaccine to the pharmacy partners so that they can open up smaller vaccine clinics. So CVS, I think in our region, there are at least 3 CVSs that will receive vaccine. There'll be several Walgreens. I don't know what towns in this area, if any, that have a Walgreens that are going to be able to get shipments of vaccine. But the governor's plan is to continually expand capacity, and in doing so, we'll start getting, we hope, a steady stream of vaccine, because at the end of the day, this plan, like the health department's plan, is to take care of those that are most in need, that are least likely to be able to get out, and to travel into Boston or travel to one of these mass sites, and those, that group in the population that's that might encounter, difficulties going online to fill out, the scheduling form. So there's a lot of unknown, and I, as the chief, reminds me, I like filling in the space between the unknown and it's a challenge because all of the health departments want to participate. We want to get going because we practice on these plans every year. But the reality is right now, until this is I think this is the first day that the governor actually mentioned local health departments.
So Sean, can I ask you a question about what you said earlier? I know you had originally planned on the Moderna, if I'm saying that right, vaccine, and then you switched because of notification that you probably weren't going to get that vaccine to Pfizer, and that required more people, a larger number of doses available, and you've submitted those plans, and now you're waiting to hear from the state whether you will be allowed to receive them, place the order, get a delivery?
No, we're allowed. We are allowed.
You just won't know when.
Like we're allowed. We submitted an order, and until I have that order in my hand, and they'll be gloved hands because it's at 80 degrees, and I can only open the box twice a day. But until I have that in hand, that's all I can say right now. And because, like prior to this call, I was on the phone with one of the communities, in southern Massachusetts, and they got burned several times where they had large clinics planned and they had a university and a hospital partner, and they didn't receive any vaccine. So
wow.
They had to turn away, one of the clinics, they had to turn away over 500 people.
Well, that's what I was wondering is even though Friday you expect to get a delivery date of the quantity of vaccine that they're going to give you, whether that's the same as what you ordered and whether it could be a month before you get that, even though they say,
we hope it would be sooner, but to that point,
I hope it was yesterday, but that didn't happen.
But and to that point, this town that I was speaking to, they were supposed to receive their Pfizer shipment on Monday, and it came today.
Oh.
Today is when they were opening their clinic, and it's this. There's so many logistical challenges to opening the clinic and to using the new software and just getting people on board, and then making sure that you don't waste a drop of a dose of vaccine. It's just a challenge, and then that's why we're all putting these lists together. But the lists, I've suffered I've suffered the I guess the penalties of not having a clear communication about what the lists are there for. But a lot of this is just done in haste because while Casey and I are focused on putting the vaccination program together, we're also, that Monday, we were managing illness in 4 hockey programs, 2 lacrosse programs, a basketball program, and then about another 20 or 30 cases in town. And so you're like, just constantly pivoting back and forth. And it's just a challenge to sit down and to check in with everybody to get the communication. And so we got, the Google, I think we got it out on Facebook. It came out to the town's website, I think 2 days later. It came out to the school staff that we were compiling lists. late that Monday or Tuesday night. And we're working with the senior center right now to get all the lists together. And then there are these other, like, the senior housing isn't managed by me. That partnership is operated through the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. So, Linda, the Housing Authority Director, and I said, like, we'll partner together. They order their own vaccine, and they submitted their order. They provided, we have 2 addresses that we proposed, but like, it'll be interesting to see if I get word that I've got Pfizer vaccine, and for them, they only, they have nowhere near 1,000 people that need to be vaccinated. So, like, they're like, oh, I'm going to put in a Pfizer request. I'm like, you can't, because you don't have a quarter of that population. You need to put in a Moderna, because they're never going to ship you. And if they do ship you, I'm not ready to run, full-time clinics through the weekend.
Do you run the risk of having a problem with the state when, if the longer it takes, individuals on your list may find other places to get the vaccine, and that lowers the number of doses you need? And can that cause a problem with the state providing you those doses?
No, not really providing it, but it's then, if that, when that happens, then you need to have, you just need to be able to quickly send emails out to people to see if you can get them in there. And
Right.
and it's just, like, you can see all of these challenges that continue to compound upon each other. And so it's not this is a full-time job on its own.
Oh, absolutely. But I know you had a great plan put together for the original Moderna. Has that been scrapped and it's gone, and say,
No.
we'll let you use it?
No, because we are working with our partners at the DPH, and we're working with like Norman is, he's got a lot of skin in this game. He's going to all the meetings, like the chief. It's not uncommon for the chief, Casey, and Norman. We're all on the same meeting, because we want to make sure that we're all hearing the same message. Norman is participating on some higher level meetings just to make and advocating for us in the town. I'm advocating at with a different group of individuals, but the hope is that at some point we'll flip back and we'll be able to get access to more Moderna, because it's an easier product to use, and it's just there's a lot less risk. But at the end of the day, we're looking to get shots in the arm.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's and then we're trying to do that, just working with a set of logistics that are completely out of our control. It's really up to what can Moderna and Pfizer churn out, and this could all change when Johnson & Johnson's comes online. That should be in the I'm hoping before the end of February.
Now, would that mean you have to work on a new plan for Johnson & Johnson?
No, that Johnson & Johnson it's a piece of cake. It's a single shot. Yeah. It doesn't have a lot of the refrigeration restrictions that the other two have. It's not that effective, but I guess maybe generally speaking, it's not as effective as the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines, but at the end of the day, our goal is to provide a vaccine that is going to ensure that, or as best as we can, assure someone that if they contracted COVID, they were no longer going to die from it. That's the end goal, is that we're going to be able to live just like we do with flu. We vaccinate people to, if you catch flu, we're going to lessen the effect of you catching the flu if you do catch it, and then it's or you might, it's this, again, like I said, there's just a lot of unknown, and at the end of the day, like I said, just the delivery of the product, it's delivery and distribution through the state process. That's just all. It's all been a challenge, and the message is to be patient, because we're doing everything we can on our end to get it into people's arms. And that said, and this is one of the things that both Chief Slayman and Chief Bennett reminded me when I came on board, is that Hopkinton is a very, we have a strong and independent population that's well educated, and they are ready and prepared to advocate for themselves. And this is an opportunity, if there ever was one, for people to advocate for themselves. It's if you have a senior that that's 75 and above, that is comfortable getting in a car, but maybe not comfortable with using the online registration and scheduling system, help them, and there's a chance that you're going to be able to get them in to Gillette or some of these other facilities. We want people, when the opportunity arises, act. And if we're the easiest opportunity or the easiest venue to go to, get your vaccine through the health department. But if there's an opportunity in one of these mass vaccination clinics, or at a local CVS, or one of the hospitals that are standing up larger vaccination clinics, by all means, I want you to go there. And it's what, as we're trying to get some of the straggler, like the first responders that missed their initial vaccine, opportunity, what we've been doing is trying to help people find places to get vaccine. And we want people to go to the state website. We want them to be educated. We want them, if that opportunity arises, we want them to take that. And but for those that, again, aren't able to get out, our goal is to provide you an opportunity. For those that are homebound, we are working on a means to provide those residents vaccine. Like, if I can throw it in an ambulance and bring it to them, we're working on what are our options for, because we want, again, my goal right now is to take care of all of those that are the most vulnerable in town.
But right now, the only way for someone who's eligible in phase 1 to receive a vaccine for COVID-19 of any manufacturer is having the state provide it to some organization to distribute it. Is that correct?
Yeah, you have to be an approved provider to be able to receive vaccine.
But the state is deciding how many of those vaccines go to each of these. And the state's the one that determined who qualified under the so-called phase 1.
Yeah, they set the rules.
But it
So-
seems to me that I've seen cases, or maybe not cases, it's not true, I've seen them. I have the feeling that the state has a tendency to expand their guidelines for phase one recipients of the COVID-19 vaccine to meet the needs that they perceive in the state.
The one, and I wouldn't even call it, I don't know if I'd call it a criticism, but what they've done is they've set up, the groups and the phases, and we just didn't have the vaccine to be able to provide, all of the people in those phases. But that's the challenge that, it's like I've become a fairly good study of, I think, the governor, and I can tell what's upsetting him and what's really got him angry, and it's this, the frustration that there, I think, and I believe that the state really believed that there was a federal stockpile, after we received our initial allotments, that there was stuff on the shelf that we could draw from, and that doesn't appear to have been the case. And so now it's figuring out, again, how do we put together a plan? How do we distribute it? How do we distribute it equitably? Who do we focus on to get it out the fastest? And at this point, the mass sites have been a priority. The pharmacy partners, because in the hospitals, because of the equipment that they have been a priority. And now, the local health clinics, and so it's right now local health clinics, physicians' practices, local boards of health are now, those are the ones that they're looking to now. So
phase one was first responders, and then there's phase two,
first responders and frontline hospital people.
Yep. And then phase two, part one is people 75 and older. And then phase two, part two is people with 2 or more comorbidities.
And 65 and older.
And 65 and older. And then phase three is like
I'm not even gonna I'm not even gonna commit, because
I'm not asking you that.
But this is the other thing that the chief is saying, is that, and all of us agree, this is so political now that, it could be the angry 5'3" health directors are going to rise to, phase group 2, phase 2.1, and then all of us that are my height or below will jump in because we were that squeaky wheel. And this is the problem. It's trying, you want to be able to, I want to be able to give people hope. I want to be able to help people schedule for this vaccination event, but they keep on changing, and the rules and who falls into what group, and I don't know what to say about that, the next group.
No, but my question that I'm trying to get to is, I understand the delineations. My question is, who determines at what time different groups go? Is it, is it by the calendar, or does the state suddenly say, oh, this first group seems to be pretty well inoculated, now we open up the next one? How does that work?
No, it's all run by the state.
Okay.
The state sets, they set the expectation of what the timeline is going to be. They make the determination of who's eligible. They assign, say the metrics or they outline the documentation that we're expected to review to verify that people are, meet the age requirement, meet the job requirement, meet the comorbidity requirement. So they set all of those rules, and our job is just to execute on that plan that they put out. And that's why, like I encourage people to go, maybe a good practice would be for residents to look every Thursday at the state vaccine website. That's when they're updating the website. That's when they're releasing the new vaccine appointments. So it's really, if there's any time that you're gonna, to look at the state website, it's Thursday. There'll be some updates on Tuesday, but Thursday is the time when they're gonna release a lot of the scheduling appointments.
And how many towns did you say are in the little consortium that you put together?
We have 5.
Okay.
And then, then there are towns, this is a discussion I had with one of the state reps last night is, what if you don't have KCRI? What if you don't have a health director? What if you have a health agent who, is just, they're really good with wells and septic, but they don't really participate in any of this. We talk about equity and inclusion, but this system, the towns that have the resources or the staffing that are most active and aggressive are those that are going to, benefit. So they're trying to offset some of this by setting up clinics in, like in Roxbury and Brockton, and really setting those communities up. But this is an issue. Like there are a couple of communities that, we're trying to figure out what are they, who's taking care of them, and are they going to be rolled in with us? We just don't know, and that's a question that the representatives are bringing to the governor's team, and I still think that there'll be, this whole system is fluid enough that I expect there to be changes, and that's why it's really important to stay informed. And right. It's really important to advocate for yourself and your loved ones. And then those that have got in, if you speak to Irfan and some of the other the residents that have got their parents in, they said it was fantastic. They were in and out of the clinics in 10, 15 minutes. It's the scheduling that's the hurdle, and then the rest of the process has been really right. Fantastic.
So you had mentioned earlier in the hour that you would never want to order vaccine that unless you knew it could go into arms without, being wasted. So we have the 5 towns together, and you put in a request for a box of 900 plus Pfizer. Now, when you put your plan together and put in that request, do you have 900 plus people lined up that are ready to go should that box ever materialize?
I've got the numbers, and I have lists of other 75-year-old. Like yes, I'm taking care of that. I'm a former risk manager. I mean, yeah. People would give me $1 billion to invest in property, and my job is to make sure that I'm not helping them invest in that contaminated property. It's all about return on investment, protecting your assets, and then, if you fail to execute, the risk is that that those opportunities are going to dry up. And,
Right.
And I do not want to put, Hopkinton at risk.
Yeah.
Not having, opportunity. And so that, I mean, that's, yeah, it's.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm not asking you to play armchair quarterback, but I kind of am.
We have to talk about quarterback too before we end.
Okay. There is obviously a lot of concern. There is a little bit of vaccine. There is all these stages and phases of when people are becoming eligible and when they can get it. There are like critical time frames of when the vaccine is viable. All this stuff goes in, right? Looking back, I'm just curious at this stage where you've been through some of it. You've been through the first responders. You're preparing the 75 and older crowd for what you can get. Do you think, like, if you were in charge, is there anything that you would do different? Because the only reason why I'm asking is it seems to me a lot like when people used to line up for Ticketmaster back in the old days, and it was like, oh my gosh, there's only going to be 100 tickets and we camp out overnight and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I understand like all the pressure and stuff, but with the benefit of a little bit of hindsight, you've been through this, the very beginning stage of it, do you think that there is room for improvements? And and you're saying that the name of the game is always changing almost daily. Do you see it evolving and do you see it getting better? What's your professional critique of how things are?
I mean, I believe it's getting better. I believe, coming out of the grocery world where it's all about logistics, and I mean, this is a job for logistics experts that, were I the governor, I would have, and I had, time to think, and I wasn't dealing with the holiday surges and all of this other stuff and monitoring beds and availability and everything else that's going on with this pandemic. It would have helped to have like a team of logistic experts working with, the DPH and the governor's team to put, like, this is why, like, Dave McGilvery is really terrific at managing logistics. And, you need these people to be able to look at, like I sat down Saturday and I was calculating how many doses per vial, per person, per hour, and just calculating all these tables so that at the end of the day, I have my optimal number of vaccinators. So I need, and then I'm able to look at those numbers and then look at my output to see how many chairs do I need, how much, what's the linear footage I need in a hallway to accommodate the people that are waiting. Like, this is it's like, you think it's just putting, shots in arms, but it's, I gotta have an ample amount of room for people to sit for 15 minutes. I need to have a checkout system. For those that show up, like if they had a problem with their paperwork or they forgot their paperwork, I need to have people that can manage that. And it's just, and you got to have contingency plans for everything. We were looking at the center school to run some of the operations, but they had a sprinkler break. They're having some issues with the heating system. So, we had to pivot. And initially we were thinking about doing all of this outside. And then after seeing how well the Westboro clinic operated, and then just said, wait, we know how to do this inside. We just need to provide, people need to wear masks. We have to set the expectations.
Right.
You wear a face covering, you distance, we provide, this is when you got vaccinated. Here's a little paper. It says the time that you can leave. There was a person sitting at the back door. You have to hand your paper in and your little tab with your time on it before you can walk out the door. And then it's just making sure that you've got all of the other, we've got to have an ambulance, we've got to have staff, we've got to have, the EpiPens, and just in case. So it's building this whole structure, and it's a lot of.
Yeah, definitely. Now, question I have is, if you get your first box and you got to do 900 plus, does that mean you're already scheduled to get your second box to give all those people their second dose? Or do you have to worry about?
Yes, no, that is, yes, the answer is yes. Okay. That the commitment from the state is that if they give you, an allotment for your first dose, you are supposed to get an allotment for the second dose.
Okay.
What's in the middle is still an unknown.
Okay.
If I said anything differently, the chief would probably,
yeah,
put me off the head.
All right. So earlier on, you were talking about advocating for yourself and advocating for your loved ones. Can you describe in this particular instance what that looks like to you? What does that mean?
It's sitting down with the chief and giving his mom a call. This is how you would register to get vaccinated at Gillette Stadium. Let me get my watch out. Here's a link, go. I give up. And it's like, so what is this difficulty? And then we sat there with a group of seniors to figure out what were the hurdles that they were having troubles overcoming. And so we've been working to develop plans to help people get over those. And then we're looking at, all right, we're going to need a staff of advocates that will help people. And then when you do that, how do we handle their second notifications if they're getting vaccinated outside of Hopkinton? And it's trying to put all of these plans in place to make sure that for those that we might help schedule to get an appointment outside of town, how do we make sure that they're going to get notified and reminded to go back to that facility to get their second vaccine? And then, if they're getting vaccinated in a clinic that we hold, how are we managing that communication, that second communication? And that it might not only be communication, it might be setting up a ride. It might be, we have to look at all of these contingencies. And then it's also, what if we plan to open up a clinic on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but our shipment doesn't arrive until Wednesday at noontime? Mm-hmm. How are we going to shift? And then, how does that impact our volunteers? Do we have a second level of, volunteers? One of the comments, and it's just making sure that you have that workforce and those competencies covered.
Yeah.
And that's why Casey has me doing like greeting.
Now, I know of a couple people in town who don't use the internet. What do you do, especially 75 and older? How do you handle that? How do you reach those people?
It's what we've been doing with the senior center is, how do we, in this, during the pandemic, how are we keeping in touch with people? If they were regularly coming to the senior center for meals, how do we continue to provide meals for them? So, Amy has done a fantastic job at keeping in touch with those that are homebound, that, do not use the internet, really, that might only use their phone. So we're looking at all of these different modes of communication. So we will, and we're looking at, do we send out alerts over different, phone systems? Do we, again, do we have scheduled times where people can call in, we can fill out their paperwork, and then we can help people navigate the system. But like you can just see, like, just all of these different complexities that we have to look at. And because at the end of the day, the last thing we want is, to leave anybody out, especially those that are, the most vulnerable.
Right. You had mentioned earlier that Thursday is a big update day from the state.
Friday? Thursday's the update for how we're doing as a community. And then,
okay.
And then Thursday's also the date that they update, so it looks, the governor had said that it looks like on Thursday, they're gonna add 100,000 new scheduling slots. So
Okay.
if you're 75 and you're ready and willing to go, if it's that concert that you want to go to, get your phone ready, get your laptop ready. And this is, I know of a family that lives out of state, and they knew that, in New Jersey, like at 9 a.m. on, Monday morning, they were going to be able to book their appointments. So they had 2 phones, 2 computers, they had everything set up. The one was number 9,000. No, one was number like 90,000 or something. The other was like a number 127,000, and it was just, and they hit send within like 20, 30 seconds of each other. And it just, and then that's an illustration of this other challenge where, you've got 100,000, say we've got 200,000 doses of vaccine, but you've got 1 million people trying to, schedule that.
Right.
So you can't set an expectation that everybody's going to get access. It's going to take 5 to 6 weeks. But actually, it's going to take longer, because it's going to take, it could take double that.
Okay. So we just got 30 seconds left. If somebody hasn't been to the state website, what's your quick advice for how they find that?
I believe we have a link on the town website, on the COVID website. And do not gather for the Super Bowl. I do not want another spike. And then we're going to challenge the town to see if we can get green over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Excellent. Things are getting better, right?
Yeah, our caseload is now at what it was pre-Christmas. And I believe that if we just, we avoid large gatherings and avoid overexposure, we have a good shot at going green. And then we need to bring our positivity rate down in the community. We're at a 4. We should be below 1%. And if we get there, that's going to help the schools open.
Yep. Perfect. All right, Sean, thank you so much for your time. You're always giving a lot of time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no. And like, I'm not touching that stuff back there.
Okay.
It's bad enough trying to navigate this. It's people like, oh, dry January. Like,
all right.
It's not an option.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for watching the Hangout Hour. We'll see you next time.
All right.